This is Detroit's Morning Answer with John Anthony on FM 92.7 and AM 1400. The Answer.
Good morning, Detroit. Detroit's Morning Answer with John Anthony. If you missed that first hour, head over to theanswerdetroit.com. That's theanswerdetroit.com. You missed a good interview about mosaic cakes that I got to get to when I'm back in Southfield. I'm definitely going to get there. But I really do believe you're going to enjoy this next conversation. I really do, because, and here's the reason why. Michigan's future does not begin in Congress or in Lansing. Where does it begin, John? It begins in the classroom with the people who teach our kids what to believe about their country, their identity, and their freedom. Right now, one of the biggest stories unfolding in our state is not happening inside the legislature. It is happening inside Michigan State's University's College of Education, specifically its Foundation of Education course, which is shaping the worldview of the next generation of teachers. This course is supposed to teach future educators how American schools work. Instead, it's being used to teach them what to think. That is not education. That is indoctrination. The ideas being planted inside that class will be carried straight into Michigan classrooms, Detroit classrooms, and every city in between. That is why we brought in someone who has spent years studying the ideological takeover of teacher prep programs. Tim Minella is a senior fellow at the Goldwater Institute's Van Sittert Center for Constitutional Advocacy. He advances policies that defend constitutional principles in education and public life. Before joining Goldwater, he taught at the Lewis Honors College at the University of Kentucky, Emory University, and Villanova. He has published on American history, the history of science, and the history of education. He holds a Ph.D. in history from the University of South Carolina. Tim has watched this trend from the inside. He knows how these ideas move from college classrooms to K-12 lesson plans. And today, he's going to help Michigan parents understand what is actually going on behind the scenes. Tim, welcome to Detroit's Morning Answer.
Hi, John. It's great to be with you this morning.
Yes, always. Tim, what is the most concerning content you found inside MSU's Foundation of Education course, and how does it compare to what parents assume teachers are learning?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think parents rightly think that if you go to a college of education, if you want to be a teacher and you're training for that career, I think they assume, well, you're going to teach kids how to do math. You're going to teach kids how to read. You're going to learn how to teach kids phonics, the foundations of reading and understanding text for themselves. But what we see across the country and at Michigan State, which is the latest school to be raised up here by journalists, is that that's really not the focus of colleges of education. The focus is, as you talked about, indoctrination. This required course for students who want to become teachers at Michigan State, this is all about, as you said, indoctrination, not education, not teaching them the skills that they will need to run a classroom and to increase achievement for their students. This course advocates that future teachers become activists in their classroom.
Yeah.
The one required book in this course is by a left-wing professor named Bettina Love. Mm-hmm. And among many other things in this book, the book basically advocates for teachers turning their classrooms into indoctrination centers for their students. It advocates teaching their elementary and secondary students direct action. What that means is, let's train them in protesting.
Yeah.
We can get to math and reading another day. The important thing is to learn how to protest for social justice. So that's the really problematic thing here, is it's not really about education. It's about indoctrination.
And Tim, when universities say, and I'm putting up my air quotes, a course examines systems of oppression in education, what does that actually mean in practice inside Michigan State University's teacher prep program?
Well, at Michigan State and other schools that teach that concept, The idea is that our society is structured to oppress.
Yeah.
And that is its foundational purpose, and that is what it actually does. And so everything about our society, from the family to our Constitution, is, people might say, very high-minded. This is the idea of the indoctrinators. They might say very high-minded things about, this is about, the family is about raising the next generation. The Constitution is about protecting people's rights. But really, that's just a smokescreen for its actual purpose, the hidden purpose, which is to keep certain people of certain races, certain identities, keep them down.
Yeah.
Keep them down in a subordinate position. This, of course, is false.
Yeah.
This idea is false. And perhaps if you want to teach this idea as an idea that some people hold and we should be aware of it, that would be one thing. But this is being taught as how we should understand our society. It's being taught as the quote-unquote truth. And that's a real problem for how we're training the next generation, not just of teachers, but of leaders in our society.
So basically, these teachers go to MSU and they learn this. Now, are students being encouraged to, in your opinion, analyze history, or are they looking for to teach the kids to adopt a predetermined ideological frame?
Well, in my view, they're being taught to adopt that frame as the truth, and I think more than that, they're taught that this should be their mission in their careers.
Wow.
So, instead of focusing on student achievement, instead of raising the bar for math education, reading education in our country, something we desperately need after COVID. The statistics are really, really concerning about the learning loss that's occurred. And instead of raising achievement in those core subjects, again, the focus is on these social justice agendas, in training people to become social justice warriors. That is not only, again, as we talked about, based on a very flawed premise.
Yeah.
It also takes our eye off the ball about what schools should be doing, which is teaching kids how to think for themselves and teaching them core skills that they're going to need in later life. So that's the real problem here.
Wow. I'm actually writing a book on the isms, the socialism, communism, and how we've gotten to the point where we've gotten leaders like Mandani, the Squad, AOC, Ilhan Omar. And it sounds like this is something that might be one of the things that get them to the point where, because when you think about students having the freedom to question or challenge the ideology, do they have that, or is disagreement punished socially or academically?
So I think in too many cases there might be on its face, you have that professors, if they're challenged on this, they'll say, well, I don't tell my students to believe anything. I simply present them with these ideas and they can decide for themselves. And that's a common defense that they put up to when they're challenged on this. But I think what the problem is that for too many college classrooms, it is all one way. There was a very fascinating recent study that was done by professors that made use of databases of syllabi across the country. Mm-hmm. And what they found was when professors discuss controversial issues like criminal justice reform and the idea that our criminal justice system is racist, this is a very controversial idea. Many people disagree with it for good reasons. But the professors they found in this study, they're not teaching the alternative perspective. They are solely teaching the perspective that says that American criminal justice system, policing, it's all racist. It's all systemically racist. It's all designed to keep people of certain races down.
Yeah.
And there's very good reasons to think that is not the case, but those reasons are not being put up for consideration for students. It's all on one side.
Tim Minella, walk us through the pipeline. How does this type of ideology taught in a college education course show up in a Detroit or Lansing elementary classroom or high school?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, John. So this is this is how the pipeline starts, where when you go to a college of education, like I said, it's called a college of education. You would think the focus would be on teaching how to teach kids core skills in reading and math and other subjects. You would think that for future social studies teachers, you would learn about the history of our country and the Constitution and its important institutions in our country. But when you start to dive into the curriculum, that is not what is being taught. This kind of indoctrination is what the focus is. And that begins this process of churning out people in the teaching field that largely, not exclusively, but largely adopt this left-wing identitarian ideology. And that's a real problem because, as you said, those people are the ones who end up teaching our children. Those are the people that a lot of them eventually rise into the ranks of leadership, the principals, the superintendents, on down the line. And so it's a real issue in our schools that in colleges of education and in universities more generally, that it is so one-sided in terms of the quote-unquote education they get. And I think it's very important to look at things like my organization, Goldwater's Freedom from Indoctrination Act, that says you can't require this indoctrination as a condition of graduation.
Yeah.
You can have these courses as optional courses. You cannot require them. And that's, I think, an important step we can take.
And Tim, I think this is another point of contention, and I believe it's important. What behaviors or phrases should parents listen for in their children that signal a teacher has absorbed this ideology?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think anything having to do with structural oppression or systemic injustice is a red flag, and I think it's a very important point that parents need to be aware of. They need to be vigilant here. We see this material popping up not just in history classes, not just in social studies, but in math, in basic foundations of reading. And so unfortunately, the parent needs to be aware of this, not just in areas that you might expect, but in the entire curriculum. Because the true believers in this kind of education, this education for quote unquote social justice, they believe it should permeate the whole school, the whole curriculum. And so that's why parents need to really look over what's coming home from school. Look over what their students say they learned at school.
Tim Minella, is there a connection to this type of teaching and the national teacher shortage? Are people walking away because they do not want to be forced into this ideological mold?
I think that's certainly a possibility. And I think you raise a really important point that we have a teacher shortage in many parts of the country. We should not be screening out people based on their ideology, their political background, their social or economic background. We should want people to become teachers. And I think you raise a really important possibility that people who just want to teach kids and just want to help them pursue their dreams, I think it's a possibility that many of those people who are non-ideological are being basically screened out of the profession before they can even start. That's the real problem because I know as a parent, I would want the teacher that is focused, that is laser focused on helping my child learn, not the teacher that has an alternative agenda to promote social justice.
Tim, I recall I had this history teacher. He was my homeroom teacher as well, but he was also my history teacher, and he was very Afrocentric, right? But he would never, and this is what drew my love of history, he would never make you feel bad for having an alternative position or different thinking process as it related to the issues that we were debating within the class. here's my question. Are there states or universities offering a healthier model? Because I don't just want to look for the problem. How do we solve this? Are there
Yeah.
states or universities offering a healthier model that Michigan should look at?
It's a wonderful question. And I would say a really important thing we need to do is use some of the models that are already in place. At Arizona State University, there is a department in the university called the School for Civic and Economic Thought and Leadership. And what this department is doing is they're actually teaching the fundamentals of our Constitution and our system of government. And they're doing it in a way that, in my opinion, is much more effective than the other parts of the university. The students who take courses from them actually learn about the important elements of our Constitution and the documents that help explain it, like the Federalist Papers. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing that we need across the country. What I would say is really important when we're talking about colleges of education is if you want to be a history teacher, for instance, you want to be a social studies teacher, I would say go into these programs like the School of Civic and Economic Thought and Leadership. Go get a fantastic education in American history, in American government, and translate that, and you should be able to, into a teaching career, so that we emphasize the core knowledge of these disciplines, not this kind of critical pedagogy that is about transforming society, but is about understanding our society in a rigorous way. So that's the kind of thing we need across the country, not just in Arizona.
Tim Minella, what tools can you give to the parents? Where can parents go to understand this issue better, to develop tools, to develop counter arguments? Because I think it's so crucial that parents understand what's happening as it relates to education. I know Michigan just changed their education curriculum, and I mean parents were up in arms. It's a very woke curriculum now. But where can parents get the tools to help their kids push back against this nonsense?
Yeah, really important issue. And I would say that the Goldwater Institute does a lot at goldwaterinstitute.org. I would also point you to one of our partner organizations called Defending Education. They've done some really great work. They used to be Parents Defending Education, and now they're Defending Education. They've done some outstanding work in shining a light on a lot of this woke social justice nonsense in our schools. And so there are a lot of really good organizations doing that, really shining a light here. And I think that's something I would emphasize, that if you're a parent and you see something that is off in terms of what your child is bringing home to from school, you should contact organizations like mine, organizations like Defending Education. There's a lot of good journalistic organizations doing work as well, like the College Fix. You should give that information to them, and it really does make a difference. It forces the people that are promulgating this nonsense to defend it, and when they try to defend it, they really can't because it's not really defensible. They rely on it being secretive. So that's a really important step.
Well, Tim Minella, I want to first say Happy Thanksgiving. What does Thanksgiving look like in a Tim Minella's household?
It's a lot of food, a lot of family, a lot of being thankful for what we have. So I'm really looking forward to it. And happy Thanksgiving to you as well.
Thank you. He's the senior fellow at the Goldwater Institute's Van Sittert Center for Constitutional Advocacy. Tim Minella, thanks for joining us on Detroit's Morning Answer.
Great to be with you, John. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. Detroit's Morning Answer. We'll be right back.